Okay, we're going to be taking a look at what a homestead is. A homestead is a place where you have growing for you your fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, legumes, all the foods you need for a well-balanced diet. So um, I'm beginning now to leave my yard here and go a little bit over the land here where we have all the things planted. Along this bank here, we have black walnuts. Now they've come up on their own, and I've just cut the other trees back so we can have the nuts that they're going to provide for us. Here we have just some grapes here in the yard, and I'm going to be making grape juice this coming week. They've been slow to ripen this year, but they're delicious. Now amongst the grapes, I put down a row of tomatoes. And here on the ground, I put in daikon radishes. Well, these are the little radishes here that you can see coming up. I would have put them in earlier, but I wasn't impressed to, and for good reason. We went up to 90, up to 100 degrees here just a few weeks back, and they all would have bolted. So now that they'll have the opportunity to grow and produce roots. And the daikon radishes, not only did I put the daikon in there, but I put clover seed down, white clover, so I could have a ground cover of clover in here, which would help feed the grapes. And the daikon puts roots down, pulls nutrients up to the surface, but both the clover and the daikon radish, which is a brassica, both of them make manganese available. And manganese is very important for the development of fruit, because without the seed and the manganese necessary for the seed, the fruit doesn't develop. But if you have that manganese, it develops. And not only that, the manganese is very necessary for photosynthesis. And it must be in a form that the plant can use. And that is a form where the manganese is reduced with just two molecules of oxygen into a manganese oxide, instead of, say, like a manganese sulfate with 4 molecules of oxygen, because then it's not available to the grapes here or to crops. So this is important in regenerative agriculture, to use cover crops like the clover seed, which will probably come up and flourish next year, but the daikons will be for a fall crop. Along the edge here, we have walnuts that I've selected. Now this is a piece of ground, can't be used for much else, so it might as well be used for nut trees. And you can see the walnuts in the trees. They're about ready to drop. Some of them are starting to drop. But walnuts create an ecosystem that is rather specific, and not many other plants can grow in this ecosystem. And so in it, I've put the blackberries. This is a thornless blackberry. It's a big blackberry, and they do well in here. So I'm going to let them develop in this system here. It's one of the few things that grows well in here. You can see native things. Actually, the berries do well, the Japanese jewel berries, and but that's just one ecosystem. We talked about the ecosystem, how we have a chestnut oak ridge ecosystem and a marsh ecosystem in there, and a red maple swamp ecosystem behind the house there. And we also have a field ecosystem out there. This would be a particular one with black walnuts and the species that like to grow underneath it. Now watch the trench. Here we have a garlic patch with no garlic in it. The garlic was harvested in August, well actually July, and in between we put buckwheat, and the buckwheat is coming to seed now, and we'll come in here and cut some of the seed off so we'll have seed for next year. And next week sometime, we're going to put garlic back into here. Now, the buckwheat is one of those 5 plants or groups of plants that change manganese into the right form that's going to increase photosynthesis and increase production. Around the edges, you can see comfrey that was planted. That's very good in orchards and for trees in that it brings nutrients up to fertilize the plants themselves, brings them up to the surface with their tap roots. So this is a garlic patch, and it will be planted next week. Now here too, we have not only a walnut there, but we have a pecan tree, and we have other pecan trees over the shed that are beginning to produce. The sunlight over the shed is being gathered by the pecans, and that will give us a crop where normally you wouldn't have something. This here is daylily, and daylily is nice to have around the property, as well as the evening primrose here. When these grow up and they produce, at this time of year, they'll begin to grow a root, and both the daylily, which is a pretty flower, has an edible root that can be gathered in hard times, and so too does the evening primrose. Of course, you'd have to learn to recognize it in order to use it. Here's some asparagus, and here's a taller evening primrose here. They've left their seed, and the seed will begin to grow. The asparagus just comes up year after year. This is obviously a female plant with this here, and some of these that don't have anything may be male plants. But just, this used to be a patch of asparagus. And okay, this is, like I said, another pecan and a pecan and another pecan over there. And of course, this is a walnut. And I put a grape up into the walnut, and it should be producing by now. These are the walnut fruit, and you can just, they'll break down to a black, and then you'll see the black nut that can be harvested here. And this husk here, the green husk, is what they use for a dewormer. Now here we have some pawpaw, and they didn't produce much fruit this year because they were hit very hard this spring by a frost. Well, while we're here, we'll just take a look at some of the pecan that are starting to come. They take a while to produce, but the pecan are starting to produce on the tree now. And some of these here. The pawpaw is the only member of a tropical species that produces this far north. And this is some of the fruit on it. It grows in clumps and sometimes singular or Okay. Now here are some of the grapes that we'll be harvesting and making grape juice out of. This is Concord here, the normal Concord grape juice. It's a good year for grapes, good year for fruit. It's been a very good year for fruits and nuts. Not every year is it like this. And so you have to learn to put up things. That means to put them away, either can them or hot pack them as juices in jars, and then you have them, you know, for a few years. Matter of fact, this coming winter will be the third winter I've been eating the peaches that produce well that many years back, about a little over 2 years back. This year they produced rather poorly because of the cold snap that we had. It killed the buds on almost all the peach trees except a few hardy ones. I marked 4 trees that were hardy enough to withstand that temperature drop this winter. Another type of fruit tree, nut tree, and this year it's actually producing nuts. I don't see it on this tree here. This is a cross-pollinator, but on this tree over here, possibly you could see some of the nuts that have formed. They produce a round-like cluster, and it's a sort of like a hickory, but the whole nut family, the walnuts and the hickory, they're all in the family, same family. So this is just another variety. Now, over here we have the garden that's passing by, but it still has things in it. We have Jerusalem artichoke in this corner here, which is something we don't really often harvest, but there's a lot of roots there if we ever need it, so we just leave this clump here. Now, within the garden here, we've got corn in the back that we'll be roasting later on in the evening, and we've had some corn that we've harvested. The kale is looking very, very poor because the temperature went to 90s to 100 degrees just a couple weeks back, and this is Russian kale and it likes cool fall weather. So it was very stressed, but the leaves are starting to come out and we should have a nice crop of leaves to harvest later on. The summer squash there is dying down on this side here, but it produced enormous amounts, this crookneck squash. It's called a crookneck squash because it has a neck that's crooked. But right here is our onion patch. We planted the onions in the spring and we've harvested them. And then we come through 3 weeks before we pull the onions, and I put squash seed down the rows, and I put, there were actually beans down here, and they come up, and then we put the kale down over here. So we grow 2 crops in this area. Now on the fence, those are pole beans that have finished off. We initially had on that fence peas, and when the peas came into flower, we put the bean seeds down the bottom of the row, and then within the next couple of weeks we harvested the peas and they died. We took the vines off, and then the green beans came up, and so now we harvested the green beans as an edible bean, and some of them went to soup, and just yesterday I was out picking some of the beans that have turned to soup beans, and the gathering seed for the other varieties. I did different varieties here. We have odds and ends within this fenced area. With all the deer, you have to fence or you're going to get your crops eaten. These squash this year don't know how to stop. They have just produced and produced all over the place. I'm tripping over these squash here as I come in and out. They just have grown and grown. And we put zinnias in here because zinnias and other flowers somehow assist the growth. I'm not quite sure how, but we've been told it has. Now down here where you can see potatoes, you can see the fence where we put the cucumbers on. Matter of fact, there's 1 or 2 cucumbers farther down just that were left over on here. But after the cucumbers were out, or even before they were out, we put the potatoes down so that we would get a later crop of potatoes here where we grew initially our cucumbers for, there's one left over, for our pickles, cucumber pickles. There's other odds and ends in here, tomatoes and eggplants. They were planted in a clover cover, but don't see a lot of clover in that cover anymore. Now this line of trees here, this is the line that we cleared. Behind it we have some orchard. There's the peaches, and it goes all the way down behind it. But this line of trees I left, and these are wild cherries. The reason I left them is when I have a nice wild cherry harvest, I don't have any trouble with raccoons eating the grapes. And they can wipe me out. And so we left them in what I call my food forest. Here, this row of cherries, I put kiwis climbing up in them, and you can't really tell, but there's kiwi fruits up in them now. And then a step down, I put, there's a plum, and we put some peaches, and then we put these hazelnuts, and the hazelnuts are producing nicely this year. Some of the ones farther down are bowed to the ground, but you can see the beaked hazelnuts in here, and they seem to be a pretty good size this year. We'll take a look and see the size of the nut. This is a smaller hazel or filbert, people call it. Cherries were higher. These step down, the hazelnuts and peach trees, and then it steps down to the gooseberries. Now over here, we have persimmons. These aren't the Japanese persimmons. These are the American persimmons that will produce this far north. And they've got a pretty good crop here, and I think the branches will hold them, but I don't know. They're looking pretty heavy, and the wood is not too strong. Now there's a larger variety of persimmon. I don't know where it is because I can't remember where this tree came from. But you can at least see one example of that size. Now, right here was a very nice persimmon, but if you notice, the branches are dead, but it's pushing out new shoots. This was called Nikita's Gift. Nikita Khrushchev, they developed this in Russia, in the Crimean, which is, I guess, a little warmer, but you know, Russia is a cold country, and they wanted persimmon that would grow in that cold country. So this produced a good sized fruit, very nice fruit, but it wasn't able to take the drop this winter. They killed the peach buds off because it was too cold, but it didn't kill the whole tree, so it's coming back, and we'll probably have fruit on them next year. We have pears down through here, as well as peaches planted amongst them, and different raspberries along the edge, mostly black raspberry. Okay, we'll come and take a look farther down here. This whole area is about 5 to 6 acres. And just to get an idea of what it's like in the valley here and what we're growing. And most of it is field, as you're going to see. probably we have all total 1 acre in gardens. And then of course we have the fruit trees to fill in the other parts of the area, but we use every bit of ground that we can. Here are some peppers in here. This is our little pepper plant patch. It produces all the peppers we need. And this is the kiwi arbor through here. I guess maybe we better go in so we can take a look at some kiwi. Now this has to be fenced in because the deer like to eat the kiwi leaves. Now, this is a later variety of kiwi. It's good and hard now. This is cordifolia, and you can see they just love to grow foliage, lots of it. You'll have to prune them 2 or 3 times in the summertime, as well as a good winter pruning to keep this foliage back. We'll take a look at some of the other varieties. We have a tomato patch behind you that's finished, and in it we have the radishes beginning to come up. I put the radishes and clover down in here. I had clover established in here because this is permanent ground here. I don't till this ground. I haven't for 3 seasons now. And I had a good clover cover, but having the pond so near and the geese producing their young before we had the fence 3 years ago, they came and ate off all the clover and killed it out. So I put the clover seed back again, and the radish will only grow and then die out this winter, but the clover will be a permanent cover. Let's see what we can find here. This is well, we won't go in there. This is another variety of kiwi. This is the Geneva 3. And I also have a Dunbarton oak, which is the earliest variety of kiwi. And then you have the Geneva 3, and then you have the cordifolia coming last. So there's 3 different varieties of kiwi in here. And I plant them in blocks of 8. And it's a tic-tac-toe square where you have the male in the middle, and around the outside of it you have the 8 females. And so I have 3 blocks of them. The males are just a clump. I just keep it down low. And then the females I let climb on the wires so we can get underneath and pick them. And I use any ground that I have in between here. I just put in squash, and they produced wonderfully. You can see they're growing all over the place. And some of the squash are really large in there. This is a blueberry patch, and not only do you have to fence it, but you have to put nets over the top, and that's what the blue netting is that's rolled up. It just goes over the top and covers, and that keeps the birds out. Okay, now here's my popcorn. It's drying down, and it's about ready to be harvested. And I will take the ears off and shuck them back like this. And then dry them. It's been a very wet year. You have to do this immediately. Dry them. This is an Amish white with a few different colors in it. The purple colors are in here because I have a flower corn, a Navajo blue, and they cross with the white, and it gives us these purplish colors. So I would take a few of these ears, peel them back like this, and whoops, I didn't want to break that off because I want to keep this on. But I would get 3 or 4 together, tie them, and then I'll hang them in the house like this so that they can dry down. Let's see. Let's come along this way here. These extra tall ones were seed that came up and crossed into a multicolored ear. It has different colors. That's a reddish type one. But I like the white the best, so I'm focusing on the white. It pops best. These don't pop as well, and that's important if you're going to have a popcorn. Now on the hillside there, and it stretches along the backside of the food forest here, you can see the apple trees there. There are the Red Delicious still on the trees. I've been making apple juice and applesauce from the Yellow Delicious that are behind the Red Delicious. And that stretches, it's just 3 rows, but it stretches the entire length of the bottom of this ridge. And of course you can see there's peach trees and hazelnuts and the gooseberries along the bottom there. That's part of the food forest. I've cut down the big cherry trees in here because I'm replacing them with other trees that are going to give me some more pears and another apple in there. When we put that food forest in, we also planted raspberries, but the trees have grown up and phased out the raspberries. But we have other raspberries in other spots. And the vines that are growing in the cherries there are kiwi vines. I figured, well, if I've got a tree going up in the air and the cherries can take a vine, I put kiwis in all those trees there so that they could go up. And that way the animals will have some kiwis to eat and hopefully leave the ones that are lower down for me. They'll find more peace up in the air eating. Now here we have yacon. That's Y-A-C-O-N. It's a South American plant, and it produces roots that look like sweet potatoes, and they grow in clumps of roots about that big, and they keep well. They keep all the way. I was eating them all the way into June until my cucumbers started coming, and then I said, well, I'd rather eat cucumbers. And then down along on either side here, we have sweet potatoes that are growing. I have 2 varieties this year of sweet potato. We'll see how they. One variety I've grown for a few years, the Murasaki, a Japanese one, is a very good one, and the other one is some type of orange one, but I haven't eaten that before. Now this is the greenhouse, and in the greenhouse we start our plants, the tomatoes and peppers and eggplant and different things. And on the north wall, since the greenhouse is covered, we grow a European grape that would grow in California where it does not rain. After May, it doesn't rain until October. And so this does not have any rain on it, but the grape roots come out and You can see the clusters of grapes on it, and they're really sweet, really sweet. These two have to be harvested and made into grape juice. And we have tomatoes growing down it. If just want to take a look, we figured might as well utilize the ground. And these are a cherry tomato that grows along the edge here. We're resting this half of it, so I put them in here and we just tie them up, and these are nice, nice tomatoes. This is sun sugar. It's the sweetest of the cherry tomatoes. So this is how to utilize a greenhouse after you're finished with your growing your plants in the spring. We have the grapes to come up on the north side because the sun is shining in from the south side, so they don't interfere when they begin to come out with my plants that are in here. And then we put the tomatoes in, which can take the heat in here. Okay, we can go back out. This is a pretty poor example of the raspberries. They were nice at one time, but they get vines and grasses in them, and it's good to replant them every so often. They've expanded themselves around the corner here, and so you can see they're taller and looking better. Now these trees here are Carpathian walnuts, but they're not old enough yet to produce. They've got a few of them scattered here and there in here. Now, right up there on the hill is a chestnut. This is a cross between the American chestnut and the Chinese chestnut. The American chestnut died out because of the blight, but Dr. Graves in the 30s did crosses, and so now we have trees from him that my father got, and some of them are as high as 60 feet before they broke off in an ice storm. So they have the potential for timber trees, once again, this particular cross. But right now we can just go there and see if there are any chestnuts on the ground. This is about the time they begin to drop. Here's red raspberries here. They can get quite a few berries on them, and just have to get out and pick them, and we haven't. There gets to be so much you just can't keep up with everything. Now this is what a chestnut looks like. These are the chestnut burrs, and they're very prickly. Soft as can be, like velvet on the inside, but boy, you don't want to get prickled with those. Now here's the nuts that were inside. And all you have to do is, keep the ground mowed for nut season, and then you can just come through and pick them up. And we're going to have some roasted chestnuts for folks to try and see what they're like. You got to get them early because there's a curculio worm that will get in and spoil the fruit. So if you pick them up, roast them that same day before the worm gets to develop. This garden here was a spring kale garden that has come and gone, although we do have some what's this, basil over here, and normally the basil will die off, but that little bit of basil amongst the foxtail millet grass there is a resistant to this fungus, and it has done well. So it's nice to find varieties where that don't succumb to diseases that are common in your area. And work has been done, and so we need to search the catalogs for work that has been done for varieties that have resistance to things, just like Dr. Graves worked on crossing the Chinese, a bush chestnut, with the American chestnut, and got a chestnut blight resistant tree that will grow tall into a forest tree and produce a good size chestnut. Okay. These grassy areas, which we're letting grow back now, we mowed them a number of times in the spring to give us mulch to mulch our plants with. The yacon and the sweet potato, because we're this far north, we put on black plastic, not black plastic, but actually black tarps to increase the amount of heat, and it gives us more production for a plant that likes to grow farther south. But we're letting the grasses grow now, except for the walkways and roadways, so that we'll have more volume for next spring for mulch. Grass is important in our operation because we mulch all of the onions are all mulched. Garlic we mulch with leaves in the fall. When we plant them, we'll be putting them in next week. Now here's a patch of comfrey that was put in. Once you put it in, you have it. But comfrey is very nice to use. It's quite medicinal. You can look up things, and I put that out in the orchard around the trees, and it pulls up nutrients and provides them. Now this garden here that you see with all this grass, this is oats coming up. I grew a crop of oats in here. It fell down. I let it fall down, and it's come up, and oats too are one of the plants, the oats, the buckwheat in the garlic, the brassica, daikon radish, also in there, and corn itself, if it's not genetically modified, as well as forage legumes like the clover. All of these make manganese, reduce manganese into a form that can be used to increase photosynthesis and increase production. The more sugar a plant produces, the more foliage it can grow, the more fruit it can grow, the more roots it can grow. And so this is why we want to emphasize with these types of cover crops. Now, as I was cutting down the old plants, I noticed a chestnut coming up that the squirrels must have planted. So I just marked it and put it aside, and I will dig these chestnuts up. And I know someone that wants some chestnuts. They don't have any, so I have them marked in other spots where they've come up. Now in here we have a patch of corn that's looking pretty sad, but it's about ready to eat now what few smaller ears there are. We didn't have much manpower this year, so we weren't able to weed this patch of corn, and except just till through it once. But it will have it will have some corn to eat. You can see the ears right here, and this will be something we can eat in the roast that we're going to have at the evening time here, after we finish the tour and the other demonstrations that we have. And these always seem to get the corn ear worm, and in the supermarket these days, see the corn ear worm in the top, and I just whack the top off like that with a knife before I use it. But the corn ear worm is not on your supermarket corn because they genetically modified your supermarket corn to grow and produce a poison in the corn, which you get to eat, that will kill the corn ear worm. So they don't have it on it in the supermarket. Along here we have odds and ends. This is a Another raspberry. This is an old variety. Doesn't really usually produce this late, but this year it is producing some. Now here I have, well, you can't see it because the grapes are grown over, but that's honeyberry. And the reason the grapes have grown over is because I've abandoned them. It's too warm for the honeyberry to produce much fruit this far south, but I gave it a try to see if it would. Here we have a Cornelian cherry, and I had a couple of them here, but I cut them down. And these produce fruit, but the fruit doesn't taste good. So if it doesn't taste good, I cut it down. Now along here we have some peaches, and these produce very nice, but of course they did not have cold weather resistance. Only 4 trees of about 70 peach trees that I have had enough resistance, and they were all white. They're all white peaches. They had enough cold resistance. This is a goji berry, and this is not the environment to grow goji in. So although there's one little goji berry, this does not really produce fruit here. It likes a very dry environment, very dry environment. Along here though, I have black currants, and they produce a very nice medicinal currant, but they're early in the year, the black currant. And then also too, we have, I've put in figs here, and but you've got to cover them in order for them to produce. And I gave up covering them because I have covered them, went through all the work, pulled the cover off in the spring only to find that voles had gotten in there and had eaten the bark off them. So it wasn't worth putting the effort for it. Trying to find some with, some of these produce fruit, which you can see on it now, which never ripens. Here's a seedling persimmon I put in, and it's producing fruit. You can see the fruit in the tree. Not quite ripe yet. You don't want to eat it too early. It's very puckery. You attempt to eat it too early. These are just more grapes that I put in along the edge here. This is an earlier grape. These two, they look like they're not that pretty, but they're very delicious grape. Very delicious grape. They too all have to be harvested. Now, this here is my orange tree. Now you say oranges in Connecticut. This is not a citrus, it's a Pancerus. But it looks like an orange. You cut it open, it looks like an orange inside. It's sour like a lemon, and it can be used for a lemon. Not a lot of juice in it. And then behind us here, we have honeybees. We have native bees all around, but the native bees don't get much work done. I'll need at least a week to a week and a half of the blossoms sitting on the trees in order to get full pollination. Whereas these honeybees, they pollinate so fast that all you need is one day with 1 or 2 hours of bright sunlight, and they will pollinate every tree I have all at once. And they're very fast, but they're very lazy. They don't like to come out when it's rainy or the conditions aren't just that right. But boy, when they're right and it's sunny, they just come out and they get the job done real quick. So that's why people use honeybees. And then of course they harvest the honey, and that can be used, and we do use that too. The honeybees are kept by a beekeeper who just puts his bees here. Okay, that pretty much wraps up what I was going to show you here, give you some idea of what a homestead is like. We didn't have as many vegetables to demonstrate, but we'll take a look at some of what we have harvested already here. Now in the shed here, it's difficult to see, but you can see the dry beans that were hanging up here, hanging to dry, and it's a variety I'm trying out this year, and we'll take them off later when everything slows down outside, bring them in and pull them off, and then beat on them and knock the seeds out, and then try them and see how they taste. We have our drying racks, and they're pretty much finished, but we dry the onions on these racks here, and we've dried the garlic on them. We mostly grow the candy onions because they get to a good size, and people like a nice big onion. This is a Ailsa Craig, also a big onion. This is the first time I've grown. I want to see how well it keeps. These we have to pay a good price for the starts that we buy from Texas, but these I've started with seed. We also have here, I'll grab one of these containers, the seed garlic. That we're going to be planting in a week. And this is, we saved the bigger garlic. Here, let me just put it here. And then we pull the cloves off, and then we'll plant these for our seed. That way each year we're selecting just the biggest. We have, you know, a bigger and better clove each year. Okay, well, I guess that should pretty much cover our tour, and we'll be doing some demonstrations at the house. We'll be showing how to can peppers and maybe salsa. We'll also be showing how to make apple juice and grape juice, and to hot pack it like they do in the supermarkets where you buy it in a jar. We'll be doing the exact same thing. Okay.